episode of the Ripple Intent podcast, where we are changing the way we work. So I am one of your ever delightful hosts, John Grant, and Kyle is with us as well. And we have a special guest today. I'm excited to welcome Sarah Moser. Sarah, introduce yourself for the listeners.
Thanks, John. My name is Sarah Moser. I am the training and coaching strategist for Page, which is an architecture and engineering firm. I describe my job actually as being a few different things. I'm a trainer on soft skills. I'm a coach. I'm also sometimes a therapist or a mom if needed, depending on what my group needs.
That's fantastic. I think we all need a little bit of that, each of those different roles of yours every day. So we're super excited to have you on board. I know that today's topic is near and dear to your heart. And we've certainly spent a lot of time talking through these things together. And so, Kyle, why don't you say hello and lead us into why we're here today?
Yeah, hey, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. This topic that I think many of us have heard for many years, and it's talked about, thrown around, and that's just the concept of trust, right? We believe and understand, and we've been told in the business world for many years that in order to be successful in business, we need to trust, right? We have to have trust. We have to have the trust as individuals. We have to have trust as an organization. And I can't tell you how many projects that we've kicked off over many years where we all sit down and we say, okay, we're going to do this project. It's really complex. We don't have enough money. We don't have enough time. We've got a lot to do. Let's get at it. And the way we're going to succeed is by trusting each other. And everyone looks at each other around the table, nods their head and goes, yes, we all agree. We should trust. And we go, check. And we move on. And of course, you're rolling the dice at that point. And does the project succeed or not? Maybe. Sometimes they wildly succeed because you got lucky, but it's truly like gambling. I mean, you roll a 7 every once, in a while, and it's pretty rare. And so even though we say we're going to trust each other through our actions, behaviors, and how we do things and experience and all kinds of other stuff that we're going to talk about, that trust often erodes, gets stressed, puts in conflict, and the team doesn't actually trust each other, even though we all agreed at the beginning that we should. So it's always been something super curious to me, and I always wanted to understand it. So we spent a lot of time trying to unpack, even though it's a little tiny 5-letter word, what does it actually mean? What does it look like? And that's what we're going to be talking about in this chat. So I'm going to start with that right there, guys. If you were to define trust, if you were to actually say, what does it mean? What does the word trust mean? How would you go about saying that? What is that? What's your definition?
So in lieu of starting with Webster or our new friend Google, there's all sorts of literature out there, right? From Stephen Covey to Patrick Lencioni, right? All sorts of how to improve your teams, authors. One of the ones that really resonated for us that I want to mention was Charles Feldman. So if you need something a little bit shorter to read, he wrote The Thin Book of Trust, which literally is, it's a thin book of trust. It's an easy read. This is actually really helpful for me to kind of frame the topic. And one of the things I really liked about it was that he actually breaks down trust into 4 distinctions. So he breaks it into care, sincerity, reliability, and competence. And most of these, I didn't normally think about it that way, but honest, now you start peeling it apart, oh yeah, for sure. Does this person care about me? Do I care about them, right? Are they really truly being sincere? How can I tell? How do I know? Reliability, I think, is one of the easiest ones. Do they do what they say they're going to do? Right. And competence being, again, the 4th, right? Do I trust that you have the knowledge, the capability, the understanding, and how are you showing up for me? So those 4 distinctions really kind of pulled it together to help me create a definition of what it looks like for me to trust others, or how do they show up for me? Sarah, how about thoughts from you?
What I really appreciate about this is that it acknowledges the fact that trust and the way that we experience trust is a little bit different for each person. So when you talk about trust as a really big overall umbrella concept, every person is going to think of something a little bit different. And I think that's part of what causes some complication, or why it's so hard to build, because you're all looking to build something that's a little bit different and a little bit personal. And so I appreciate that this actually acknowledges that there are different parts of trust that each person will be looking a little bit more towards specific sections.
So if I'm hearing you right, Sarah, what you're saying is, out of those four, individual people tend to lean heavier on one or two of those four, not all of them. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think it depends on the person. I think it depends on the situation that they're in and the relationship that this trust is being built in, which one is going to fall heavier. So I don't think necessarily that one person is always going to only value care, but I do think that it provides a common language for saying, I have a lot of faith in this person in terms of how much they care about me, but maybe the sincerity is not quite there. So it allows you to see maybe which part of trust is a little bit lacking in that situation or in that relationship.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because it makes me think of a boss I had years ago who he could care less about the caring and sincerity part. I remember sitting in a meeting and we're talking about this really complex project, and there's a couple of people there who are leading from one of the companies that we hired. And I remember my boss's comment was, yeah, you know, those guys they're actually kind of jerks and smug, and they just come across, you know, like they know it all, but it doesn't matter because they know what they're doing and they'll actually get it done. So it was like almost a free pass, right? Telling me as the subordinate, right, the employee, that it doesn't matter how they act or behave or talk to other people when it comes to social interaction, right? What he was saying was none of that's important. As long as they get stuff done and they know what they're doing, that's what's important. So he basically took two of those distinctions that Jon shared and said, those are important. The other two, whatever. If they're there, great. If not, who cares? Right. So as an employee, an impressionable employee back then, I guess I'm still impressionable now, but not nearly as much as I used to be. You know, that really rung true. It was like, yeah, you don't have to worry about being a nice person or having people like you, or right. It was very clear from a leadership standpoint. This is what's important.
What
Yeah,
often
absolutely.
happens, I think, is that from the leadership perspective, what's important to them is therefore put on to their employees of what should be important to everybody.
Right. And we're talking about trust. That's it. Right. So it's interesting to think of all four distinctions here, right? All four components. If you have those four components, then you have a foundation of trust. Let's be careful. If you have all four, it doesn't mean you have trust. It means you have a foundation for the opportunity to actually create trust. So it just kind of actually leads us to another question, right? It makes us wonder, how about you guys? Are you naturally trusting, or are you naturally untrusting of other people?
Sarah, you go first.
I am naturally trusting, definitely. I like to believe the best in people. I have very high in empathy, though. That's one of my top 5 strengths and strength finders. And so I trust my gut and my instincts when I meet somebody about whether or not I feel like they're trustworthy. So that can be hard for me because I need to make sure that I'm also absorbing all the information that they're giving me in terms of who they are as a person, and not just making an immediate assumption about who they are. But I definitely use that gut instinct of whether or not I feel like that person's trustworthy. Most of the time for me, it's going to be yes until they prove me wrong. Jon?
I was waiting to hear the trust but verify. Ugh, it's one of my least favorite sayings, right? That's one of the things we hear from a lot of people. Yeah, I trust but verify. That to me is like, no, you don't trust, right? Until someone has proven it.
Yeah.
Right. You're waiting for them to show up. And for me, I kind of had to sit with this and think about my strengths, right? And so for our listeners, a lot of you know, but we are ardent advocates of Clifton strengths, really using that as a tool for understanding who you are and how you are naturally inclined to show up every day. And so if I look at my top 5 strengths, what's some of those 4 distinctions, the things that really stand out for me in terms of whether or not I am inclined to trust someone right away, which is my preference, by the way, is really the reliability and the competence. Those stand out for me more. There's a piece where, like, yes, I would like you to care, and I would like that you be sincere about it. But my biggest triggers are you showing up and being reliable, right? Are you doing what you're going to say that you're going to do and make those promises to me? Or are you not, right? And as long as I have an understanding of where people are coming from, then that makes it a lot simpler. But I have learned that I have to have that conversation with folks, right, to set the ground rules and make sure we have the same expectations. So I am naturally, I want to trust people. If you break that trust with me, then it is challenging for me to rebuild it with you. Kyle, how about you?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I would say I back in the day, so I'm gonna build on Sarah's comment about the strength finders piece, because I have a strength that's called self-assurance, and basically what that means is once I pick a direction and believe I know where we're going, I will go, and other people will either join me or eventually figure out that I'm right, and join me. So that in itself doesn't necessarily lend itself to, do I trust other people? It's like, what it more was more transactional. Are you going to help me go where I know we need to go, or are you not? And so it was really heavily based on the whole competence and reliability piece. You know, I learned that from that boss I had. I learned that from other folks too along the way, before I finally met somebody and worked for somebody who influenced me, that the whole care and sincerity, right, the whole people side of things is actually just as, if not more important than competency and reliability. And so from a trust standpoint, I would say that I was more the East Coast for the first part of my career, right? A generally stereotype for folks on the East Coast, right? We do not small talk until we built a relationship where I understand that you actually know what you're doing and you're going to follow through. The West Coast mentality, again, gross stereotype. We're going to chat for a long time about small talk until before we get down to business, right? And so being from the Midwest, he's always confused me, because in the Midwest, we kind of do all 4. We're in the middle of all 4, right? We're in the middle of both. So there's a little bit of small talk, and then we get down to business and we do what we're supposed to do. And then we do a little more small talk, and then we move on. And so, you know, traveled for a while for work and got to see all of these, and they're stereotypes for a reason. I hate to say it, but it's true. And so this led me to, and really it's my experiences now where I am a bit hesitant to trust people without getting to know them in some way, shape, or form, whether it's competency or personally or what have you. Yeah, I could honestly say right now, I've lived next to the same neighbors for 3 years, and I don't trust them. Is that good, bad, and different? No, I'm like still skeptical. It's not that I don't, it's not that I do. I'm withholding it. And so at work, it's very similar. It's, I want to trust you, and I tell myself I want to trust people I meet, but I still withhold it. Don't give it graciously until some time has passed and they've met my, whatever my internal measuring stick is, before I go, okay, they're a trustworthy person. It takes some time for me to get there. So I wouldn't say I'm untrusting. I'm more of middle, where I don't trust, I don't mistrust. I need information and context before I decide whether or not you're trustworthy or untrustworthy.
I find it really interesting because both of you were really leaning heavily on the reliability and the confidence. I am very much in the care and sincerity. I need to know that you care about me, and I need to know that you care about what we're doing together, what we're trying to accomplish, and I need to know that you're being honest with me about what it is that you're saying to me. Reliability, I can learn, confidence, we can learn skills, can teach you how to do it. But if I don't get a sense that you care about me or what we're doing, trust is going to be really hard for me. And I think that care is something that I can feel when I meet somebody. And I think reliability and confidence, from the way that you describe it, are kind of something you have to prove, right? You have to prove that you're reliable. You have to prove that you know what you're doing and that you do it well. Whereas I think that you can get an easier sense that someone cares pretty quickly on, at least I can.
All right, let's lean into that for a
about you
second,
guys.
because my first question is this a gender thing? And is that a stereotype, or is that a natural inclination, or is it just who the three of us happen to be?
I think it's, in my personal opinion, who the three of us happen to be. I mean, I have relator, individualization, and empathy as my top three. So I am very people oriented, and I'm very emotion and feeling oriented. And so that's probably for me why I lean much more heavily into care, and why I place a lot of value in someone showing me that they care. And the rest of it is important to me in the context of what it is we're trying to accomplish, and not in the context of whether or not I trust you as a whole human being. What do you all think?
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I would say on the strength piece, right? That's really insightful. So like I was stereotyping East West Coast, and people can easily stereotype genders. You're right. The strength finders piece gives us that visibility. Because I'm opposite, right? I got action oriented strengths, and I've got thinking oriented strengths. So in my top five, and below that, there's a few relating strengths, but for the most part, it's action and thinking. And so that certainly naturally leads to, I'm going to put more value on what I have, because let's face it, we're all self-centered people. There's no doubt about it, right? We all believe that what we are and what we believe and how we act is how everyone else should act. And so it's that's just natural. It's not a bad or a good thing. It's just naturally, right? We think that everyone else sees the world the way we do. And so, of course, I think everyone values those things. And I've learned over time that other people value other things, and that doesn't make them good, bad, better, or worse. It's just there are other people, and they see the world differently. So what you're describing, right? It doesn't matter. We've done the strength finders thing with thousands of people, and it really doesn't matter. There's no gender bias. There's a little bit of professional bias, right? We see themes in different industries, in different sectors of different industries, of who's more naturally going to go into these different types of fields based on their strength makeup, but not at all when it comes to their perception of trust.
So, Sarah, I love that you live on the care side so much. And it comes out, right? As well as we've gotten to know each other, it really comes out for you quite a bit. And even when we first were getting to know each other, I could feel it right off the bat. So let's kind of spin this conversation just a little bit about, and let's talk about, how do you personally behave to gain trust, right? How do you personally behave to gain trust? So from how I perceive or how I trust other people, right? I live a little bit more. I want to go fast. So because I'm moving fast, I focus on that reliability and competence. However, what I have learned over time is that a lot of people need to feel that I care about them. And I truly do care about other people. It's not that I don't care and I'm pretending, but I need to make sure I channel that side of myself to show the care, to pay attention to how I am showing up. So not only am I being reliable and being competent, but I'm also focusing on the care side, right? So relator is in my top 10. And that does trigger for me quite a bit. So in that group setting, I have difficulty in group settings sometimes, but in a small group or one-on-one where I want to get to know someone, I'm really going to tee those behaviors up to really help people know I'm listening, I'm paying attention to them, I care about them and who they are and their context. What do they need in order to be able to trust me? So I really start spinning that side even harder, and a little bit less on like trying to prove myself, prove my competence. Right. I have enough, gray hair in my beard. There's no hair on the top of my head, but I have enough gray hair to, that already gives me some grace in terms of the competence side of things. So that gives me space to pay more attention to how much I care about people.
I think you hit it on the head too there, where you're saying that you pinpointed two different things. You're saying this is what I need in order to feel like I can build trust in someone. But the way you really put it is understanding what other people need and demonstrating those behaviors because you know that other people need them. And I think that that is a level of care. For me, when I'm talking about care, it shows up as someone trying to get to know me as a person, asking questions, listening to understand, making eye contact, not just talking about the task at hand or the deliverable, but talking about, hey, what is it that you need in order to be your best? And how can I be that for you? Can I provide that for you? That whole approach to working with human beings and understanding you're a whole person. And, maybe you're not at your best today. So maybe the competence is a little bit lower, the reliability is a little bit lower, but I acknowledge that that is maybe situational. And there could be something that it is that you need that I can help with that will help you in those other aspects. Does that make sense?
It does. It's having that, what we describe it as that personal awareness, right? We talk about self-awareness and personal awareness a lot, and having that self-awareness of, am I reacting based on what's driving my reactions, right? And what am I choosing to react externally? So it's one thing to, you're disappointed by somebody in some situation where they break your trust, and internally you're rah, 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 and getting all worked up. But externally, some people match their external reaction to their internal reaction, and there's times when that's appropriate. But the question is for everybody is are you being intentional about that? Right. So when someone is performing lower for a day or two, is because something happened and it's impacting them, or are they just being lazy? Right. And the way you choose to approach that situation, and it could be ignoring, it could be engaging, it could be questioning, it could be comforting, right? That's a choice, right? You might feel stress and anxiety internally because they're damaging and hurting something, but that's also a choice if you want to go and approach and engage them in that manner. So it's really the what I'm hearing you describe is, are you aware and are you processing your own emotions, your own feelings, your own reactions based on other people's behaviors? One thing I want to ask before we're out of time, it's a question we were talking about before we started talking today. And that was, it's a great question, right? So if you ask anybody out there, are you trustworthy? Right? Anybody you work with, anybody on a team, anybody on a project, whatever it may be, they're all going to tell you yes. No one's going to say, no, I'm a lying bastard. Right? Everyone's going to say, yes, I'm trustworthy. And then you're going to say, well, what do you value? What's important to you? And everyone's going to have these nice, really cool things. Businesses say the same thing, right? We value integrity and we value trust. We value honesty. We value transparency. And the question is if we're all saying that stuff, then it comes all the way back to the beginning. Why is it in project work and teamwork and in anything that we tackle at work, why is collaboration so difficult?
It's a really good question that clearly we need to think about. I think part of it is because it's so easy to say, and trust is really difficult to build, and it's really easy to break. And if you're not intentional about building trust based on the people that are in the room and what they personally need, then you can say you're trusting all day, but actually acting on it's going to be very difficult because you don't know what those behaviors need to look like in order for other people to build trust. You'll be acting instinctually from a place of what you need, but not necessarily from a place of what everyone else on your team needs in order to build trust. So you can think that there's trust, you can think that you're working to build trust, and every single person on the team can have that intention to be building trust, but they might just be painting a little bit different picture than everyone else in the room.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So like it becomes so individual at that point, right? Our focus becomes on us. It's often, or it's on the focus on the people around us in terms of how are they helping me or how are they hurting me? And how does that impact my level of trust with you? But this is a mindset as a team. So if we can turn that around to pay more attention on what are we doing for each other to build trust and make it explicit conversation instead of an implicit understanding, then I feel like we're more likely to get there.
Yeah, that's well
Absolutely.
said.
I think that's the key. I think that's the key to it, is that it's not just a word that you say and you have it. Trust takes maintenance. It takes work. It may be a feeling, but it requires action. So it's very difficult, I think, also for people to have honest conversations with each other of, you let me down in this way. My trust was broken in this way. How can we fix it? That's a very difficult conversation to have, especially if you haven't had the original conversation of this is what trust looks like and this is how we're going to maintain it. Then it's much easier to say, hey, remember when we talked about that? You let me down a little bit here, and I still trust you as a person, but let's work on that behavior rather than it being about, the person as a whole.
Yeah, we could talk for hours on trust. This is such an amazing topic, one that I see, like you're saying, it's often addressed, but never truly understood. And if I get on a team of people who are all about competence and reliability, well, guess what? I got lucky. If we all stuff our emotions in a corner and we just do the work and we say what we say we're going to do, then hallelujah, right? This is a fantastic, successful team. It's going to be awful. And it has been, because as soon as there's a conflict, right, all it becomes is an argument about some technical thing and who's right. And anyway, so I think this ever chase for collaboration that we all strive for, it really is built on trust. And we understand that those 4 competencies are a foundation to having that trust. And like you said, Sarah, it's something that you have to constantly work at and be intentional about. Before Jon, you wrap us up and send us home, one last question for each one of us. What's the one thing you want, one takeaway for everybody listening today? What's one takeaway that you've got? I'll start with mine. And that is, you have to respect the complexity of the word trust. That's it. That's all I got.
Very succinct.
Mine is that trust takes work, and it should be present in the conversation when you're trying to build it and maintain it.
I love that. For me, my takeaway is mindfulness. Like, I have to pay attention to, is my focus solely on me, or is it on the people around me? And am I really paying attention to how I show up? It's easy to not. So
Absolutely.
With that, we'll wrap it up. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today. Kyle, as always, love hosting with you. These are such great conversations. I trust that each of you will carry this with you. I hope our listeners do the same. You can certainly reach out to us on social media. And please join us for our next episode of the Ripple Intent podcast. Our topics are different every time, and we have such wonderful hosts who bring great insights to each of our topics. We'll see you next time.